I'd like to thank everyone for coming today. I'm Dennis Plouts, and I'm the CEO of the Greater Fort Dodge Growth Alliance. I'm not one of the people you came to hear today, so I'm going to be very brief. This is the first one of these STEM meetings that is being webcast, so we do have the ability to get questions from people around the area and in this region. So it won't be just you that is seeing this, those of you that are present today. I'm not going to talk about STEM other than to say the purpose was to assure a good STEM employee pipeline for our industries and our companies in this region and within the state. And as a general comment, I don't think there's any place in the state of Iowa that recognizes the need for what this advisory council is doing than this region that we're in here. We are sitting here in an area that's going to have about $500 million of investment occur here over the next 12 months. And I would expect that that might double again in the 12 to 24 months following that. And the irony of this is, or the interesting thing is, that all of the employees that these companies, that this investment is being based on, are the people that we're going to talk about needing here today and that STEM is looking at. I would go on further to say that unlike the other 37 years I've been in this area where we have tried to recruit companies, our biggest constraint today is our ability or our inability to be able to get these kinds of skilled and trained employees. We have to be able to recruit them to the area, or we have to be able to provide those skill sets, which is again exactly what's going to be discussed today. I believe that in Iowa, and especially here, if we cannot provide these skill sets, and if we can't provide the training within Iowa, that will be the single most limiting factor that limits capital investment in the state of Iowa. We have economic development going here, but it will not continue with further capital investment opportunities that we have if we aren't able to meet some of these goals that you're going to hear spoken about today. So with that, I think what I'll do is introduce both of you at the same time, and then you can take the program from there. But today we have Lieutenant Governor Kim Reynolds, who grew up in St. Charles, Iowa with us, which is in Madison County. She was the Clark County Treasurer from 1994 through 2006, I believe, when she was elected to the Iowa Senate. She serves as co-chair of the Science, Technology, and Engineering and Mathematics Advisory Council, STEM, with UNI President Ben Allen, who is also with us today. Dr. Ben Allen is the 9th president of the University of Northern Iowa since June of 2006. He began his career in higher education as a teacher in economics. He quickly rose to faculty leadership positions, including the College of Business Dean, Vice President of External Affairs, and Provost. Under his leadership, Northern Iowa has established priorities of increasing student achievement in undergraduate programs and providing statewide leadership in pre-K through 12th grade education, including UNI's lead role in mathematics and science education partnership with Iowa State University and the University of Iowa. In July of 2011, President Ben Allen was selected to serve as co-chair of the Governor's STEM Advisory Council with Lieutenant Governor Kim Reynolds, and so with that, I will just simply turn this over to them for the program. Thank you.
Well, thank you very much, Dennis, and you spoke very succinctly for the need of the Governor's STEM Advisory Council. I also want to thank President Kenny, and Iowa Central for hosting this Conversation Town Hall this afternoon. We appreciate that very much. We also have with us the North Central Hub Manager, Lynn Campbell. So Lynn, if you want to stand and be acknowledged. And as Dennis had acknowledged, we have students participating for the first time through live stream, and it's Spirit Lake School District and Newell Fonda are the school districts that are participating, so we're excited to have them participating in the STEM Town Hall. I want to thank all of you for being here to talk about the future of STEM, science, technology, engineering, and math. It's really an honor for us to have the opportunity to update you on what the Governor's STEM Advisory Council has been doing in its first year. But more importantly, one of the reasons that we're doing this is it's an opportunity for us to update you on what we're doing, but we want to hear back. So we're looking forward to suggestions for priorities that you think the council should set that will enhance STEM education development, not only for today, but for the future. It's my great privilege and honor to co-chair the STEM Advisory Council with Ben Allen, who's the president of University of Northern Iowa. And really the overarching goal of the Governor's STEM Advisory Council is to boost student interest and achievement in STEM while mapping that to economic development. We want to align with education with workforce and economic development strategies that will cultivate long-term economic vitality in our state. The initiative is really about innovation, it's about productivity, and it's about opportunity. It's about closing the achievement gap. It's about growing jobs, and it's about inspiring our students to embrace those STEM fields so that they can take charge of their future. So today I'm going to highlight what the council has done since it launched a year ago, and then President Allen will share recommendations from the council's work groups on how we can continue to build STEM in Iowa. We're going to talk for about 10 to 15 minutes, and then we look forward to taking your questions or comments at the end. Governor Branstad established the Governor's STEM Advisory Council by executive order almost a year ago, and he appointed 40 committed, hardworking thought leaders all across the state of Iowa. They represent business and industry, education, nonprofits, national STEM expertise, the legislature, as well as our state agencies. The council members are leaders who, just like you, understand that together we face a STEM challenge. Not only for the jobs of today that Dennis talked about, but also about the jobs of the future and the jobs that haven't even been developed yet. As you can see in the brochure that I hope each of you got when you came in, STEM jobs require education beyond high school in either college or career training. And really, Iowa has not been doing a good job of preparing all students for those jobs. The Governor and I, every year we travel to all 99 counties, and we have the opportunity to meet with a lot of different businesses, and we often hear from them about unfilled job openings and the tremendous need for skilled workers. And we also see this in Iowa's STEM statistics. For example, 51% of the class of 2012 who took the ACT tested college ready in math, and just 38% tested college ready in science. And that is just not good enough. We need to do better than that. It's not acceptable that Iowa ranks 25th in 8th grade math on national test in 2011 when we were actually ranked number 1 in 1992. So we believe that we have a shared responsibility to help every student in Iowa do what they can to reach their potential. This is a key step toward giving all students not only a world-class education and creating a world-class workforce, but it's also ensuring our ability to compete in a global economy. The council we're off to a great start, and I'm really proud of what we've accomplished in the first year, but we've also been able to do what we've been able to do with the generous support of the legislature. This has been a bipartisan initiative, and because of the $4.7 million appropriation, it really has allowed us to accomplish what we've been able to. So we're grateful to the lawmakers' bipartisan support, and we're extremely grateful for the backing of Iowa business leaders whose guidance has been invaluable in this initiative. The council's first year was devoted to expanding STEM education programs both in school and out of school. What we discovered is Iowa had some outstanding STEM education programs, but it kind of depended on where you lived, whether you had access to those programs, and so we are changing that. We want to make sure that students all across the state of Iowa have access to STEM initiatives. In May, the council announced the creation of a network of 6 regional STEM network hubs, And the 6 hubs will promote STEM academic achievement and opportunities with economic development across the state in keeping with local interests, needs, and resources. So we have Governor Branstad, we have the executive board, we have the 6 regions, and then each one of them have an advisory board as well as a manager. The 6 regional hub locations are in the southwest sector. We have Southwestern Community College. In the northwest sector, we have Iowa Lakes Community College. North Central is Iowa State University. Northeastern is University of Northern Iowa. Southeastern, we have a partnership with University of Iowa and Kirkwood Community College. And then South Central is Drake University. Each one of those were selected through a competitive bid process, and we had to think about 13 applications, and those were the ones that were selected. Each hub will receive more than $500,000 for its first year of operation from the state, and they're also encouraged to seek outside private funding too. The newly hired hub managers are busy connecting with partners in their region, including the private sector, school districts, nonprofits, anyone that's interested in strengthening STEM education. And to help deliver STEM education in a convenient one-stop method, the council this summer announced the creation of a pool of high-quality STEM programs. So 12 high-quality STEM programs were selected out of 38, again through a competitive bid process. And you can learn more about the programs that were selected if you go to our website, which is iowastem.gov. So we're really proud again of the Regional STEM Hub Network, that they're working with local partners to deliver more high-quality STEM education programs to young people all across the state. And in fact, this week, the hub managers are contacting educators and clubs and youth groups across the state of Iowa. September 14th was the deadline to apply to receive one of these 12 scale-ups. We kind of didn't know what to expect, so we set a goal of hoping that about 300 individuals, educators, nonprofits, youth organizations would apply, and we've had over 900 applications that were submitted. So it's really exciting that, first of all, it speaks to the great work that the managers have been doing, that we had that kind of response to the program. So that tells me they've been in the field and they've been making the contacts necessary, but it also tells me that there's a lot of interest there and there's a tremendous amount of need. So we're thrilled with the response, and now we have to figure out a way to follow through with that. So we're working on that right now, and on Monday we'll have a press conference that will deliver the information about who was selected. We certainly know that we have a lot more work to do to make sure that our students are globally competitive when it comes to STEM. And we need to make sure that we put the right policies in place to restore Iowa schools to best in the nation. And that certainly starts with recognizing that we must open career doors to all students, not just some students, that all students deserve a world-class education, and that certainly includes STEM. So with that, it's my privilege and pleasure to turn the podium over to President Allen, and he's going to talk about some of the objectives that we're looking at moving STEM forward. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Governor. It's great to be here. Dan, you showed me these facilities a couple of years ago. What a great learning environment. I'm envious. But it's very appropriate for today's discussion. Also want to thank Lynn for her leadership, and just also good to be able to recruit you away from some other area of the state. So thank you for your leadership. I have the task today to talk about moving forward in the sense that part of the process that we went through, along with identifying the regional network and identifying those 12 exceptional programs to scale up, was to kind of develop a system of thinking of how we should move forward. And we developed 7 working groups composed of more than 300 individuals, educators and students and business people, policymakers. And those 300 individuals spread across these 7 working groups came up with a fairly long list of recommendations. And then we worked to get that down to 6 key ones that I'd like to talk about briefly. After we get through the road tour, so to speak, community visits, we will take those recommendations, add your input and the input from the other 13 sites, and try to make sense and come out with a very strategic, sound set of proposals or recommendations to move forward in the STEM area. The first area that got a lot of discussion from those work groups is the issue of professional development. We know that the teacher is the most important person involved in this STEM initiative in many ways, and how do we help the teacher be successful? How do we give the teacher the resources? And this is a recommendation that involves how do we leverage what we do by getting more private professionals involved? How do we use technology better? Jeff Hertzberg was here earlier. Over here, hiding from over here. Jeff is, by the way, one of the chairs of one of those 7 groups on public awareness. Did a great job. But he also helped us last week, or the week before, where Jeff Well, the executive director, Director Jason Glass, and I went into your environment and talked with and listened to AEA members about how can we work together to make this very, very effective. So we appreciate that very much, Jeff, for all you're doing. The second area of recommendations deals with how do we improve teacher ed? How do we improve alternative pathways to become a teacher? That's an issue that involves my university very directly because we usually graduate about 500 teachers each year. And how do we get better in the area of STEM, actually across all areas, but in this case STEM, but also how do we get those professionals who are out there back into the classroom if they want to be able to add their value to this whole effort. And there's a lot of interesting and important discussions around that particular recommendation. A third recommendation builds upon what the Lieutenant Governor said about pockets of excellence across the state, but we have pockets of excellence across the country, across the world. How do we get that so someone here in Iowa, anywhere in Iowa, can access that? So we developed, or at least the recommendation is to develop a web portal to become a virtual community, a virtual STEM community. So individuals can look at the best curricula, they can look at the best demonstrations of how to teach certain areas, et cetera, et cetera. So it's a very important recommendation. How do we move forward on that? The fourth one is on at least an interest of establishing STEM-focused schools and trying to get the best ones in the country to look at and bring back the best ideas. We may not adopt everything about that STEM-focused school, but what works best here in Iowa. And that's an exciting piece of this adventure. Fifth recommendation is to increase the public awareness of STEM, building on your work, Jeff. In fact, this is one of the recommendations that came out of your group because, of course, we know about STEM, but a lot of people do not know exactly what it even means. Secondly, they do not understand the importance of it, not only for the individual student, which is the most important in my mind, but how important it is to the state of Iowa in the future. But Dennis mentioned that earlier about how important it is in this particular region. And finally, the sixth recommendation is how do we incentivize businesses to provide additional help. I emphasize additional help because they're already providing help. This is a public-private partnership. We've had great response today. But how do we build upon that so that they can provide more professionals in the classroom in some way? How can they get more equipment into the classroom? We heard this morning up the state here a little bit that there's a concern about how do we have hands-on experiences if you don't have the equipment. So that is a very important piece of how do we provide incentives for the private sector to even do more. Those are the 6 basic recommendations. If you got a brochure as you walked in, those are listed. They might be phrased a little differently in there, but the purpose today is to share this news, but more importantly, to get your feedback, to get your questions, comments, not only in these 6 recommendations, but other points that you'd like to bring up today. So thank you very much, and I look forward to listening to you.
Hi, good afternoon. I guess, how would you envision the community colleges best working and supporting the STEM initiative, and have you had discussions about that with your committee members and even also with the AEA?
First of all, as Lieutenant Governor said, as you 3 of the hubs are community colleges, either as sole providers or as a partner in the southeast section. So they've been at the table day one. We have Rob Denson on the council and also Valerie Newhouse. So we have those inputs from day one on the STEM Advisory Council. Well, on the AEA, the discussion there clearly involved all types of providers and how do we work together. If we may go back before this STEM Advisory Council, we have IMSET, which was an Iowa Mathematics Science Education Partnership.
Together we can get it done.
A team, okay. But one of the things that was a key part of that was the community college component about providing the next generation of teachers and also quality teachers at community colleges. So it's been involved in day one. The other thing is a lot of this is about STEM and economic development. And the community colleges actually play such an important role in that, being career ready, being ready for the workplace. And so it's going to be involved. Of course, the more you can help us on how we can do that, the better. We were, of course, in Cedar Falls last 2 days together, and we talked about that, but we need to have more of this discussion. Thank you.
And I think we're seeing that more and more as we travel across the state. Between traveling to all 99 counties and having the opportunity to meet with business and industry, we really see business working with the community colleges as well as the high school. I think anytime that we can get those kids to have a hands-on experience, it really helps them see the relevance of taking the science and the math and really the career path. So I'll give you, businesses are, they've got employees from their company that's going to the community colleges, working with them to put together the curriculum to help meet the needs for their business, to help get the skill set that they need. And then we're seeing the community college and that same business go into the high school. So we'll have high school kids graduating with 13 to 14 hours with the dual enrollment to move right into the community college to get the 2-year associate. Because of the career paths that we're putting in place, they can at any time step back into the post-secondary education to continue to improve their skills. So there's a lot of opportunity. The Skilled Iowa initiative with the virtual access points, if we can continue to get those in high schools, it gives the kids the opportunity to take the NCRC testing. So again, they can see where their strengths and weaknesses are and help them help meet their needs so that they have the skill set to have a great paying job when they graduate high school, to either go into a career or go into post-secondary education. So I see the community colleges as a critical component of the whole initiative.
Matt Alcazar. I have a question as far as like your mentorships or apprenticeships, because I know personally myself, I work in the engineering field. I've been in my job currently for 9 years. But if I was to go back to school to get my engineering degree, it would take me another 8 years just to get that degree. Is there a possibility of doing, you were talking about hands-on, well, I'm doing the hands-on part. How about making a lesser class load of all the humanities and other stuff and actually focus on the stuff that engineers need? Because right now in Iowa, we have a shortage of engineers and LSs.
That's a great question, and an answer to get me in trouble if I said we do away with the other pieces of but I will say that I think in general, I think we are heading both at the pre-K through 12 and slowly on higher education, hopefully more in a competency-based type of educational system. So to some degree that will reduce the amount of time it takes to go from A to B. But I do believe that most higher education institutions would respect the full complement of disciplines that will help even in the math and science and what have you. So, but I think we can do better. I think in the sense of how can we provide more advice and guidance so that people don't make mistakes on which courses to take. And I know that Dan and we try to work together from community college to 4-year institutions so that there's advice given so that you don't have to repeat courses of what have you. And we have articulation agreements between community colleges and at least the publics and probably all the privates too, Dan, is that right? And that is helpful. It's not optimal yet, but it's helpful in trying to minimize the time and the wasted resources that students would have. But you have a great question. I'll take some of it backwards. How can we focus on that without jeopardizing the overall quality of education?
My question's in a little different vein. One of our fastest growing populations in Iowa are new Iowans and the next generation after they arrive here. And one of those subpopulations that I think have been well overlooked has been the women. So are there things built into the STEM program to address the new Iowans, the great enthusiasm they have for education, and to some degree overcoming some of the social obstacles so that women feel welcome as well?
Well, one of the key targets is underrepresented and underserved, so that is a key target population that we're trying to identify with the STEM initiative. Actually, all of the 12 scalable programs, that was part of the criteria then that they had to demonstrate in order to be selected. So we understand that, and really as we bring new people to Iowa, I think we were talking about this with Dennis either earlier or with our previous stop, but you know, the educational institution and education is important to new people moving in, especially young families. They want to make sure that we have a quality education for their kids. So not only is it important as we look at reforming Iowa's education system to restoring it back to its leadership position in the nation, we need to make sure that we are providing the quality of education that they're looking for.
I just add a couple of pieces to that in terms of what the process was. One of those 7 working groups dealt with that question precisely, and it was headed by Dr. Kington, president of Reynolds University, and he has a passion for making sure underrepresented groups are part of this. I believe that this is where, getting back to the community college question, is so relevant. Many first-generation students come through community colleges, and how do we better serve them? I know, and I hate to say this from the president of the University of Northern Iowa. The University of Iowa is working with some community colleges now that is going to facilitate that. So I think it's tied to that, the previous question, how we best serve them in this area.
Thank you.
We can talk about women precisely.
Well, but I mean, that's the beauty of the initiative is it's hands-on. So a lot of times we've got students that don't have anybody at home telling them they can do anything or be anything that they want to be. So for them to have a hands-on experience and to really inspire the passion for the math and science, and again, be able to see the relevance or the outcome that they can have a great career, kind of catch them off guard, and they're in it and they like it and they're excited. One of the groups that had applied for the grant at the Iowa Lakes, our first town hall this morning, it was a group of just like 8 students, 5 to 10 students. So it was themselves that applied for the grant. I think they were successful and they were demonstrating what the project was, what they had been working on when we got done. And I challenged them. I said, okay, now I need each one of you 5 boys to go get 5 girls to be a part of this project. And they were ahead of me. They had already tasked each one of them with bringing in another, well, girl in this instance, to the project, to the team. So hopefully just this kind of awareness and opportunities and making it easier to provide these programs in school districts all across the state will start to drive the very thing that you're talking about.
Quick. I think if you talk to a lot of school districts, especially in, well, like Fort Dodge and even smaller school districts, they have a huge problem in recruiting math and science teachers. And to me, it seems like STEM is going to go nowhere if we don't have good math and science teachers in our school districts. And yet, it could take years before we fill that pipeline, if you will, of teachers in those areas. So I guess I wonder if the committee, your advisory committee are you looking at other ways that through collaboration or maybe technology where students can access great teachers, maybe online or something like that, because I'm not sure it's realistic that some of our school districts out here in north central Iowa are going to have a bunch of great math and science teachers that are going to be really promoting and getting kids fired up. And as we all know, a lot of kids go into fields because they had a great teacher. And if we don't have teachers, I know school districts that are now using teachers that weren't even trained in science, and now they're teaching a science class, or they're teaching a math class because they don't have any other choice. So is that being considered? Because I think we're going to have to get innovative, figure out how we're going to reach all these kids in Iowa when we have such a shortage of teachers and what have you.
I'll take the first shot at that. Very good question. And there are a couple of things we're doing that's related to your basic premise, and that is we have a shortage, particularly in certain parts of the state. One is, in general, we're trying to speed up the process to get teachers who have professional experiences now as an engineer, as a scientist, if they are interested in coming into the teaching profession. And we still have work to do. There are 3 or 4 alternative licensure programs in the state now. I think there could be more, and there could be better programs. And the regions have one, so I'm a little self-critical here. The second issue is just what you said. How can we use technology to get this out to rural areas in particular? I know that they teach chemistry courses now online. I never understood how they could do that, but if they can teach a chemistry course online, they can do about anything. I'm not sure how much discussion we've had. Maybe we'll take that back to the council about using that technology in a way that is more efficient in providing that service. I know I served on Institute for Tomorrow's Workforce, and that group looked at that because the other thing we tried to do is, and frankly, quite honestly, it's not working very well, so we quit doing it, is try to provide scholarships to people to study, become STEM teachers. And we get them into sophomores in college, and freshmen, sophomores, and by the senior year, half of them leave already because the marketplace is working, because they have the science background, and all of a sudden, I should say company. A company will then pick them off as away from the teaching profession. So we're trying to develop alternative ways of addressing that issue. But the shortest term solution might be that technology.
Even the technology, or when we talked about looking at innovative, rigorous pathways for an retired engineer, retired scientist from one of the companies to bring them back in the teaching profession, to reduce the requirements, to get them in the classroom and maybe work on the pedagogy while they're actually in the classroom, so that we can kind of fill that stopgap. And then through hopefully some of the educational reform, we can look at ways that we can incentivize teachers to go into some of those hard to place subjects, so we can be competitive to keep teachers in the field in science and technology and engineering disciplines where we're having a hard time filling the pipeline and keeping them in the educational system.
Maybe to follow up on what Randy just asked. Well, first of all, I applaud you because it's not simple. You know, you look at these 6 or 7 things, and you do recognize that this is a complex issue, and it's not as simple as some teachers, some parent education, some coordination, or whatever. But following up on Randy's question, I think it even goes beyond the number of teachers that we have. John Clifton's head of the Gallup poll, and he wrote a book last year called The Coming Jobs War, and in that he talked about he talked about needing to have people that want to live in an environment, the engaged people, meaning, he said like 60% of your workforce typically goes to work, does their job, takes a paycheck, and goes home, and they do what they're told. 20% of the people might actually want to do harm to the company because they're not satisfied there. And 20% of the people actually are engaged, and they're the people that every day come to work and try to look for ways to make that company better, to make more money. And one of the things I've felt that sometimes we lack in education is, or we're starting to lose, or we're going the wrong way, is that functional education where we can stimulate kids to want to work for the company even though they don't own the company, and make that company better. Now, I may be off base from what we're talking about today, but I'd just be interested in some comments relative to our educational system in regard to that.
These are not easy questions today here.
Okay, no, I want to say.
Part of the issue, of course, in all these STEM-related issues is motivation and awareness of the value of having that STEM education. Because even for parents, but for a 10-year-old kid, if they make this choice about not getting interested in math, they really don't understand the consequences of what that might mean. So part of the awareness campaign would probably be what would be the impact to that individual, but without being mean-spirited about it, just kind of lay the facts out on the table. I think the motivation piece is a huge issue about, my daughter's an engineer. And what got her motivated and loving that work was an I guess it's internship, we call it externship. Yeah. Internship at Pioneer at her freshman year of college. So she was able to connect why she's taking differential equations to saving the world. She wanted to save the world. But that Pioneer, so I think how do we get more people understanding how much value they can have just by having that motivational and having the knowledge. It's a big question.
Well, and I can just talk to you about the kids that we just met with that were recipients of one of the scale-ups, and they were talking to me about their project, and they were talking about describing putting it together and how it works and how they had to work together and they had to communicate and they had to figure it out. So there was problem solving, there was thinking, there was communication skills, they were working together. And that's one of the things that we hear that's missing right now, I think, as we talk to employers, that they're not seeing, not only are kids not having the soft skills that they need, but they're not having that component too. And I think part of that is, we saw a lot of the vocational tech classes kind of, see them moving out of the school systems. And so I think if we can get more hands in there, give them the opportunity to do internships and participate, I think we have to understand that, girls and boys just come at things different. So we need to make sure that when we're talking about STEM initiatives, we're also maybe presenting it in a different manner that a young lady would look at compared to a young man. So I think we need to take that into consideration also.
Appreciate you touching on what we used to call vocational education.
Yeah.
That's why community colleges were founded.
Yeah.
And as I reflect back, having been an educator in vocational education, we're talking about some of the same issues. But I want to go down even further yet. I hope you make these presentations to the Iowa School Board Association, because the conflict of keeping or getting teachers in part is dollars and cents. And I know what happened to vocational education over the last 40, 50 years. It's an expensive facet of education. You have laboratories, you have shops, you have various things that cost money, and your numbers are not always the highest. So if you take a look at your budget divided by the numbers of students, well, maybe that's this kind of thing that's sacrificed. So I think we philosophically and realistically need to build into all levels of decision making, including administrators, who sometimes come from areas of liberal arts, who sometimes come from areas of athletic emphasis. All of those things cost money too. But if we're really going to give this the full-bore effort that needs to be done, we need to keep those the levels of the STEM education at an equally high or higher level, certainly, than it has been.
And hopefully that's what part of this initiative can do. And it is a public-private partnership, so we have an opportunity to take advantage of business and industry, as well as nonprofits and after-school programs. So there's an opportunity not only from the school district perspective, but from the community and from business and industry, everybody looking at the limited dollars that we have and repurposing them in a manner that really gets our students to where they need to be, so that when we do have a competitive global workforce ready to meet the needs.
One other thing that I just want to piggyback, Lieutenant Governor, on what you were saying. We have trouble with finding good science teachers, for example, but we've got companies here in town, BI for one, that's got PhDs, and yet our education system doesn't let them teach. And I'm looking at President Allen here, who's the leader of our biggest teacher institution. So I'm sure you got to be careful what you say, but You got certain rules that you say, well, you got to take this education program here and this and that. Yet Iowa Central, Buena Vista, they hire people to teach our upper level college kids without that education background, but they get the technical background. They're a PhD in biomedical engineering or whatever. And I think if we want to move this forward, I would strongly look at how can we get these kind of people that are in Iowa right now, right in Fort Dodge, Iowa, that might want to be willing to teach a high school class and relieves our school system of that whole burden of trying to find a qualified science teacher who many times that science teacher may work for a couple years and then gets hired by BI to go to work for them. So something to consider anyway.
We actually are looking at that very seriously about, again, that alternative pathways to become a teacher. And you're right, I get in trouble on campus by saying this, but I also say that if our teacher ed program is not relevant to solving the problems of the state, it won't become relevant in so many years. So we have to change, but I think the key is always to make sure that the pedagogy is not jeopardized, but I think we do have to do more work in that area, and that's been a key focus of the group so far.
And it comes up that this is a comment, suggestion that has come up at every single town hall. So there's definitely, people think that there is a definite need for that.
I am a science teacher. I teach high school and I teach college. And one thing to remember is that while it is important, critical, that we have a deep understanding of our content that we're teaching, we also need to have a deep understanding of how our students learn. And people who have been in the industry have been successful in school as we might recall, lecture-based instruction. And that's not how kids learn. That's certainly not how my students learn. And so while it would be wonderful for our people here in Fort Dodge that are PhDs to come back in the classroom, we also need to make sure that they also understand how kids learn and that they do hands-on things and that they have, that they're able to communicate their deep understanding. I've had the opportunity, I guess, a misfortune to have to take 2 long-term exits from my classroom because of different, or for birth and a death. But, in those absences, we've had teachers that have come in and filled this space and they have understood the content, but how they convey that content to my students hasn't always been the best. So we just need to make sure that students understand, or that the teachers that are going back into our classroom understand how to teach our students so that they can go on and be successful in our Iowa economy.
I think you're exactly right. I was a former business dean, and we had some really great business people come to the classroom. Some were very good, some were not. But we are trying to do things to make sure even the teachers like yourself have an opportunity to maybe connect to industry in the summertime. An externship program that we have, I think it's a 6-week program where they can go to a private sector industry. The industries help because you've got bright teachers working on particular problems, and I think the classrooms help because you can then take that back to the classroom and apply what's being a more relevant way, but also to type careers in that opportunity. It also helps to rejuvenate, I think, the teachers. So it kind of works both ways. 2 points.
And I think it's finding that balance. So I think what we're hearing here and what we're hearing here, but there's got to be it has to be rigorous and it has to be innovative and it has to be practical. But there has to be some way that we can take advantage of the expertise that's out there, whether it's getting students in front of them, whether it's having them mentor or coach them in an after-school club or a weekend club. There's a way that we can better utilize individuals that have been successful in that field to help our students see what really is expected, what the requirements are, and how successful they can be. So there's got to be a great way to mirror the two together and really help reach out and latch on to kids and get them interested.
We got some young students I know that's coming from a couple school districts that are out there. How can we tie this into regional career academy? I know it's getting tougher and tougher. Some of our rural high schools having the ability to get some of the technical education out there of what's happening with what's happening with the State Department of Education. I can't even think of it right now, the new Iowa Core Basics. How can there be more funding or things to help try to look at regionalize some of these academies and the careers with the community colleges in the regions? I know we're looking at a couple within our region right now.
Is it Jones County that has done that, where you have like 4 or 5 school districts with a community college that has gone
So you
together?
got 12, I believe.
Oh, and I know, so I know there are several other areas that are looking at that, but as Vin talked about, one of the 6 areas that we're looking at, the priorities moving forward, are STEM-focused schools, and I would think that that certainly would fall into that category. When I was out in DC with STEM Connector, we went to McKinley Technical High School and visited there. It was unbelievable what they were doing there in the middle of DC, and the unbelievable results that they were getting. And then I think President Allen talked about in November we'll be visiting P-Tech High School in New York. So it's kind of like we did with the STEM Advisory Council. Linda, they did a lot of research with different states and what they put in place, and so we picked from each one of them, and then they kind of put our initiative together, and really now we have a lot of other states that are looking what Iowa is doing. When I was out in DC, I had Florida come up, I had Washington come up. They wanted to know about the executive order, they wanted to know how in the world we'd set the regions up. They thought that was a really great approach to break it down, but yet each one of these hub managers, they work across the regional lines when and where it makes sense. So once a week they're communicating and talking about what they're doing in their area and sharing different best practices. So right now we really are leading as an example for other states in the nation, and we just need to keep building on that.
We talked a little bit today about, it sounded many times like we were leaving it on the doorstep of the schools. And I want to also comment that, you know, through extension and outreach, we have our youth programming through the 4-H, and especially clubs that are being developed. That seems to have kids' interests again. You know, it's not your grandma's 4-H club anymore. But also, I think as parents, I think we have a responsibility as well. And I'll speak as the father now of a second-year math teacher in a rural school district. His first year, the parent-teacher conferences where I don't know why you think my daughter needs to know algebra. I'm terrible at algebra, and I don't ever think I ever have used it. And so many times I think if we don't have anything good to say about STEM, science, technology, engineering, or math, maybe it's best not to say anything. You know, and so how do we convey that message to parents as well? Because again, as we look at this region and the opportunities for these middle skilled positions, it's exciting here. But it's almost like we're too late to home grow them. And so we're needing to go ahead and identify who those people are that want to move to this region. And I think that's really where our challenge lies here.
I think you very eloquently explained the rationale for the STEM Advisory Council. And Jeff could speak to this more because I know your work group dealt with a lot of issues about public awareness. I remember a survey in Missouri, not Iowa, in Missouri, where they asked parents about the importance of math and science, and it didn't get any response. And that's part of our challenge. That's part of our mission. And I think one of the indicators that we are using, we have 18 indicators, is a level, first of all, of interest in math and science. And we got permission to put that on the Iowa Test of Basic Skills. Yeah. And they had 4 or 5 questions. But that gives a baseline about interest. It's kind of related to your question because if people are talking negatively about it, that's going to go down. So we hope our efforts will indicate each year an increase in that awareness and a positive reaction to STEM.
Well, and just exposure again, because, you know, my dad grew up in the factory at John Deere, you know, and it's a different factory than it was 50 years ago. It's very technical in nature. Those math and science schools will impact every decision that they make in their life going forward. If they're good at math, they can just do about anything. So it's It's about marketing it, it's about talking about it, it's about reaching out to parents, it's about reaching out to our counselors in our high schools so they're aware of the great job opportunities that are out there. And we're really trying to do that with education, workforce development, and economic development. So the three of them are working very closely and through the STEM initiative so that we can make it very easy for students to kind of maneuver through all that while bringing business in and getting them in front of it so they can see the relevance and they can see how exciting it is and they can see what a great job that'll be, the quality of life, when they're making decisions. I want to do this, it's going to take 3 years, 2 years school, 4 years school, this is the classes I have to take to prepare me for that, this is the cost of college, so I know what that educational piece is going to cost, and this should be what my salary should be if I attain that. Just to even get them thinking through that process too, and always trying to engage the parents. But I keep going back to this morning, but it's the first time we've had a lot of the kids in front of us, and I was curious because I wanted to know these kids that were doing the Lego League, if their mom and dad was a scientist. I'm not, my kids didn't have that, are they scientists, are they engineers, what do your parents do? And the guy goes, no, they don't know too much about it, but I'm trying to teach them, so if they're doing it at school and they're fired up, they're taking it home, it might not be immediately, but he's working on his parents, he's trying to teach them, so I thought that was kind of a neat remark.
Kim, to follow up there, yesterday I was at the Iowa ABI Manufacturing Convention, and they talked about how they as an industry need to partner with Skilled Iowa and with the STEM effort regard to Dream It, Do It.
Yeah.
There's already a national campaign that will be used as public relations to educate families and students about the great jobs in career and technical education.
Yeah.
So I really hope that we can make sure that that happens in a coordinated way.
And I think we have some PSAs that should be dropping here pretty soon, so we know that a certain amount of our resources have to go to that too. So that's great. Dream It, Do It's a great program.
Yeah, and the other thing too, in regard to you and I, the legislature and you approved $1 million for the externships for teachers.
That's what
And I really, the feedback again from the members of ABI was the more we can do that, the better off it will be to let them understand what the needs are for the workforce.
Oh, that's a great program. It has the ability to transform the whole process, but it's also one where we put so much state money, not very much. It's leveraged by National Science Foundation grant, as you know, then the employers will put money into it. So it's a great partnership.
Teachers go back and say that they've completely changed the way that they're reaching out and teaching their students after spending a summer in a business, and they see how it makes sense. And a couple of them even said they completely flipped the order in which they taught it. Excuse me.
President Allen, I think we've got time for one more question. Surely there's one more.
No.
I don't know if you can hear me or if I need the microphone, but one of the things that, as we hear about innovation and having that be a goal, some of our pre-K-12 school environments are hampered somewhat by rules and regulations that don't support innovation, and so they're hopeful and got a message today to ask a question about is there thinking going on about changing some of the rules or giving people some more room to innovate that again might not meet the standards of accreditation today or could help us move forward.
Jeff, as part of our initiative?
Yeah, or just thinking in general with legislators, the Department of Education. So.
Well, and I would suggest that they bring those specific issues to the Department of Education or to our office so we're aware of them. I know as we travel along around the state, the same with like regulatory or any regulations, if they're burdensome or barriers to what we're trying to do, first of all, we need to be aware of them. We can't be aware of all of them that are out there. So the best thing that they can do is to notify us, let us know what they are, and then we can start to do the research and see how we can meet their needs in a better manner.
Thank you very much.